Hey everyone, Scott here today from Peak Prosper. I'm online with my buddy Nate, one of my longtime clients, mentors, and just an overall awesome dude who runs Nate K Consulting and Floss Creative. But I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself today. Nate, you want to take a second to introduce yourself?
Oh yeah, I'm Nate K, live in Victoria, British Columbia. Spend a lot of time in Oregon and Colorado and the northern BC mountains. And I'm an entrepreneur who does a lot of SEO consulting and digital marketing for doctors and dentists. And outside of that, I love, like a lot of us, I love the mountains. I absolutely love skiing and getting outside and just living the life to the fullest and finding that balance. So that's who I am.
So Nate, what makes your business unique, man?
Yeah, good question. I kind of left the corporate gig. I was military before, and I completely switched careers about 6 years ago. And that's kind of when we met, when I rolled into Bend, Oregon with basically just a carload of stuff and dreams of ski bumming and starting a business. And that's what I did for 4 years. And it was a struggle, but I found value, in consulting for companies at the kind of kind of like what you're doing, like a more personable SEO experience, not an agency experience. And I started working with smaller clients and eventually moved up to the kind of the a few larger contracts, which allowed me to work remotely, etc., and live the kind of the remote dream. But I would say what the most value I bring is just being a strategy and affirmation partner in clients' lives for their web, what is typically a very kind of not a lot of people know like fully about web strategy and stuff like that because it's a whole nother world. So it's not a typical agency model. And then now we're kind of taking that same model and trying to turn it into something that helps doctors and dentists also have a better web presence because they don't typically come out of med school with any business training with websites, and a lot of tech people or tech companies take advantage of them because they have high incomes. And so we're bringing the cost down and the value up for them, keeping our company small and personable, which is kind of the ultimate goal. We want to be little giants and treat people like little giants.
Awesome, man. Awesome. So let's take a minute to go back to the beginning before we started working together. Where were you at? How are you feeling? Like, what was going on?
So back in the beginning, I think it was 5 years, 4 or 5 years ago when we first met, I was kind of coming out of a big career, kind of, um, completely switching gears and going against everyone's advice to me. My goal was to essentially start my own business, leaving something that had this whole, like, hey, you've got 30 years ahead of you, easy retirement, things like that, with my previous career. And it was it was messing, the juice wasn't worth the squeeze to me. I was missing being in the mountains, having a little more freedom to be outdoors and travel rather than be stuck to essentially your typical 9 to 5, which works for a lot of people, but it didn't work for my mentality because, as you know, like you, I love the outdoors. I love skiing powder on a Wednesday morning, things like that. Um, I had also just recently kind of started transitioning out of a long-term relationship, dating a girl for 5, 6 years, which was ending amicably. It was one of those things that, it just wasn't a right fit, but it was a huge transition. So I had like a kind of a two banger there where I just was like a 1-2 punch of both leaving a big corporate job to kind of restarting my life all over again. And I didn't realize until years later how emotionally how much of an emotional toll it was on me. But luckily I established a community in Oregon for a little bit, met some cool people to go skiing with, essentially found my people that I like hanging out with, and started building the business. And that's kind of what started kind of the journey where I am today, which kind of led to actually working with you a few years later and helping find a better place in my mind about that all.
What are some of the personal challenges that we worked through together?
Uh, so like an entrepreneur, I mean, even though I had the experience and I had the confidence, because I had made a ton of mistakes while working, I realized that once I switched gears and fully committed to an entrepreneur dream or a business plan or a new place to visit or even just a new mountain to climb, it came with all these barriers that I'd never actually seen before because I was distracted by, I'd never fully committed to something like that. And it brought on a lot of stress in my life as, I was late 30s. And so it was like stuff I had never experienced. I felt like I was a kid again, learning stuff for the first time, because I had this cookie cutter life for 10 years after university. And I was like, holy shit, I need to like get stuff together here. And I'm being kind of broad and general here, but it would be like little stuff like, I don't have a paycheck for 3 months. Like, what do I do? And so, and even though it wasn't something that really stood out, when I started working with you, you helped me realize some of the stressors in my life that I needed to take care of first before I actually moved into decision-making mode. It was almost like I needed to take care of my own self before I would see like progress in other areas. And once I took care of that, I would see success in other areas of my life. It's kind of like just a simple analogy. I wasn't very consistent with like maybe my sleep schedule or getting up at a certain time and being able to develop, hey, maybe you shouldn't do this or do that, and it will provide you more energy in the next day, or be more proactive in taking a day off, because even though you've got a slammed work schedule, taking that day off makes me more productive in the long run. And we went through dozens of those little situations, working through those both personal and kind of business focus issues to start. And we can get more specific too, as we kind of talk about this.
Yeah, totally, totally. So, I mean, I heard you talk about a romantic relationship that you kind of parted ways, and when people hear heartbreak, they think romantic loss. But you experienced some other kind of heartbreak that we worked through as well together. Can you tell me a little bit about that, man?
Oh man, so that's a good point. So definitely, it was very difficult, leaving a relationship that wasn't working, something that you thought you were going to be in this long, like till death do you part kind of relationship, and just something just wasn't working. And luckily that was amicable, but there was still this huge loss in my life. And I felt like I had it together pretty well because there was no real, wasn't like there was anger involved with that. It was just adjustment of lifestyle, which had its stress. But, I'm a fairly independent, love the outdoors, and I've had 2 dogs my whole life. And it was, that's what put me over the edge, actually. That was when I had lost one dog to illness, 4 or 5 years earlier, but my other dog lived up until he was, 14. So I had him for basically my whole post-grad life. And he had been through everything with me, from transitions to sleeping in the car when I couldn't afford rent while I had an office the guy just stuck by my side through it all. Like, he's the only guy that didn't like judge me or give me advice, and was just there. And he kind of went away overnight. It was expected because he was old, but man, it hit me so hard. And you were there. You saw me like get all emotional. Like, I just was losing it. I was heartbroken, and for months. It was a big loss in my life because I had my affirmation partner that was always there for me gone. And that was difficult. That was really difficult. It was like losing a son, and I I remember just laying in bed and being like, feeling like, holy shit, am I getting depressed? What's going on? Like, I had no motivation, and I was dealing with grief, And that was something that we really focused on for, I mean, I felt like every time we talked, it was about, we touched on that. It was a big deal. That was my true heartbreak, actually, was losing my best friend, you know? And for anyone with a dog that they love, you can, it's just like losing, it's just like losing a human, they don't live long enough.
Can you tell me a little bit about how we worked through that together?
Yeah, I mean, it was just a candid conversation to start. Like, I'd never felt like I was boxed into. I had actually gone and seen a counselor, and it felt kind of stuffy and almost like, well, the book says we should do this kind of deal. And it was neat because, I mean, one thing that I've always appreciated in kind of talking to you, Scott, was the fact that I was talking to another fucked up guy, you know, who got through a lot more difficult things than I had. And it created this kind of, he understood the process at a very deep level for many things. And that actually kind of made me feel good. Like it's kind of like when you dealing with someone who can relate to you in some ways, at least maybe not the death of the dog, but the actual grief behind it, or getting through something really difficult, that allowed me to open up and being a standard kind of strong outdoorsy male, crying is optional. It's not really something that is, and I felt like I could just let all my emotions out, and you made me feel really comfortable, and there was zero judgment. There was zero like, hey, I'm going to let you work through this. I'm here to support you. Here are things that I've worked through in my life with processes. You helped me understand grief in the end. You helped me understand that it's not about trying to put it in the past, but accepting that it's always going to be there and making it a part of you in some ways. My situation would probably be different than someone else, but that's what we came down to the conclusion. That's what I loved about it. It was almost like you helped me find what worked for me rather than a book answer, and there was some book stuff in there, to help guide the process, because it was very organized, extremely organized. It was like, wow, this is very detailed, very notes. And we met for 2 or 3 months religiously, and we talked about things from the first meeting because you had detailed notes. And that was great for me because here I'm an emotional wreck for 3 months. And it was really great to have you just it was almost like you helped guide the conversation and help remember what we had reflected on, 3 months ago. And as a kind of a byproduct of that, I was able to see progress. And that was much cooler to see in a casual, kind of really organized format and go, wow, this is where I was 3 months ago. And so I could actually see the progress we took, just having conversations and working through some processes over the course of our conversations.
So what are some of the results you've seen in your life and your business as a result of the work that we've done together?
I was finding some success, definitely. Before I started chatting with you, I started getting some bigger clients, but I was busy, but I was disorganized. And you helped me think 5 years from now rather than, initial success. Because I had just gone through 3-4 years of kind of grinding it out and started seeing some traction. And you helped me realize, like, dude, like, you got into this so you could have freedom. Don't ever forget that, or you can get stuck in this rut and actually create a more detrimental situation in the long term, because you get so like you're always working kind of deal. So you helped me set up a blueprint for a long-term success. And by success, I mean balance, living a balanced life. And I had always had this idea that I could scale a company smartly, provide value to a different client. And because we had a history together, you knew I had been bouncing that idea around for a few years. And you helped me kind of transition from one focus to another. Um, and then you just kind of kicked my ass. You forced me to commit to it, actually, in some ways. Like you made me say, like, dude, what's the worst case scenario that happens? It doesn't work out, and you've got all, like, it's not like 4 years ago where you're trying to grind and get just any client you can. You're like, you actually have a really great idea here. You need to commit to it. And here's the blueprint for committing to a good business. And that was neat because it wasn't the focus of the conversation. It was, I would say that was 1/6 of our conversation. It was like 5/6 of our whole experience was working on me, my emotional health, my heartbreak, my balance in life. And then it was ready to attack. And then you made me commit to it. You didn't make me, but you strongly encouraged me to, like, hey, you've got to sometimes put yourself on the line and be ready for failure if you want to see long-term success. And I did. And what I've seen is the last 3 months, 4 months, my confidence is at a different level with business, with interpersonal relationships, with my business partner, with dating, with friends. It's noticeable. It's hard to explain. Like I literally am just a different man. Not necessarily a different man, but I present myself differently. And it's all because of my mindset. It's not because other people around me are changing and seeing me differently. It's because I'm presenting myself in a different way, which is more attractive to, it's almost like I'm being less judgmental of others. I'm focusing on my own self. It's almost like it truly works. Like you take care of yourself, you become more attractive to others. You got to take care of yourself before you get into another relationship. And that, man, that you always read it in books or hear about it in memes and quotes, but it truly is great. Like you don't get into things to help fix yourself. You got to fix yourself first before getting into things, whether it's business, relationships. And that's what you helped me do. You helped me fix myself. And so the noticeable result is like, hey, I can commit to things, not be afraid of failure, not be afraid of rejection. Actually, that I think is the biggest thing. Like, hey, dude, it's okay to get rejected. It's fine. Like, it's the land of plenty out there when you're someone who's confident, have direction in life, and are able to express that in a respectful way to others. You become very attractive. And when it doesn't matter, what I look like or what my focus is, as long as I kind of present myself in this confident nature, I like myself more. And not in kind of a cocky way, but in a way that allows me to be okay to fail every single day and focus on those 1% of wins. And but I think the biggest thing is just direction. Like I see a clear direction and path, regardless. Like maybe it is floss, and maybe that will crash and burn after. Who cares? Like I'm going to fully commit to it, put my heart into it, try to build something of value. And if people like it, great. This is, or I'll continue to adjust and open my ears and be more of a listener to others, rather than try to use others to help fix my own problems, if that makes sense. I would say that's the biggest thing I got out of it, and I didn't really notice it. And it's just like training. If you haven't trained for a long time, getting out and hiking a mountain is difficult, but you do it every week for 6-7 weeks, all of a sudden it's like, oh, no brainer. It's like your body gets used to it. It's the same with my own personal health and focus. And you instilled in me processes and habits that I committed to. Not all of them. Like you gave me a list and I chose the ones that worked for me, and which was really great. I never felt like forced to do something. But it was just like you presented things that were just no brainers. Like I'd be an idiot if I didn't do this, And what was neat, it's like unlike some plans where it's some ridiculous technique that you got to implement if you stop doing it, and it's it's kind of like certain like these extreme weight loss programs. like a lot of the things, the processes we worked on were things that I could integrate into my personal life that are enjoyable and I like doing. And it creates this long-term kind of healthy approach where I feel like personally in my mindset trained now. And it's much easier now. I'm doing things, those same processes that I don't even think about it anymore. You know, it's just part of my daily schedule.
Mhm. You're talking about how success is a series of habits and how those little things that we do over and over and over again compound over a period of time and empower us with the ability to accomplish our Everest-sized goals, you know?
Oh, absolutely. And, you know, it's really relatable when we're active in the outdoors because we already understand that concept when it comes to like skiing. You know, at the beginning of ski season, we don't go as big because it's like, okay, let's warm up a little bit. You know, we've only got a few days, you know, on the backcountry before, but the mid season when we're at peak, you know, peak form, we've got 20, 25 days behind us. We're just ripping, you know, and that's how I felt like it was so easy to understand because that concept just translated to my personal life with different things.
How would you describe your return on investment in working together? I mean, there's obviously a financial investment, but I mean, there's a big emotional investment and time investment too. I mean, do you feel like you got a return on what you invested into working together?
100%. Yeah, it's. I mean, I can't associate a financial investment in that because it's not like you know, seeing like putting into stock or something like that. But financially, yeah, I mean, everything that we've done translates to my own confidence and personal kind of goals, and that in turn is I see a difference in how my clients, you know, are, and I have the ability to be more confident in my pricing, and so my rates have gone up slightly. I am committed to a brand that potentially could grow to be $1 million a year company um, because I took that risk. Would I have taken that risk eventually? Maybe, but not with the same confidence or the same kind of approach. Um, and tell you the truth, it was actually perfect timing with our little thing because we hit COVID right after we kind of finished. And it was really neat to have some like a gap of time to really reflect on myself during some quarantine time up here in Canada. And it was interesting because I didn't have as many opportunities to go out and travel or be outside. And so I would use some of those so it gave me a chance to work on some of those habits. That in itself was a great investment. I probably would have been I probably would have gotten depressed over COVID because I had been dealing with that heartbreak. But luckily I had some of those things in mind. Return on investment, I think overall, which is the thing that you can't put a price tag on, is just I have peace of mind that I'm going in the right direction.
Hmm.
And that's to me is like health is your wealth. You always say that. And that to me is it's not just health, but it's like the wealth behind sometimes an investment is not actually monetary. Many times it's about peace of mind. I mean, um, I'm always reminded when billionaires get divorced that money doesn't actually fix things. You know, and so return on investment many times is associated with money. When I associate my experience with you with peace of mind and direction, that to me is the biggest wealth I can take away from it.
Hmm. So Nate, you're a really smart guy. You're hardworking. You tried working with therapists. You probably read some self-help books. Like, why did you decide to work with me as your coach to help guide you through this life-changing experience in this pivotal time?
Well, they say you're a product of the five closest people you surround yourself with, right? You know, in every aspect of life, from your family to your business to your friends. And, you know, if I surround myself with people who are not like me, I don't get any value out of it long term. And I just felt like it was a no brainer. It's like, here's a guy that is outdoorsy like me, understands where I'm coming from a standpoint, you know, not from you've experienced that same exact thing I went through, but the fact that you understand the feelings that come out of it are very similar. But I think the biggest thing is like because you and I are very different, actually. Like in sometimes the way we approach things. But when it comes down to our similarities, that's where we sync up. We sync up on an emotional level, on a level of balance. Like we both have similar goals in life of hey, I'm going to enjoy the outdoors. I'm going to take a deep breath and understand that this is a special moment being on top of a mountain, or surrounding ourselves with people that really mean a lot to you and support those same goals of balance. And I never felt that with a therapist or a book or things like that. I'm a bit of even though I went to university and got a 4-year degree, things like that, that there is power to education, but there's more power to putting people around you that, number one, are smarter than you. Number two, they relate to you. And number three, they respect you. And I felt like you fit all three of those. And that to me was hey, let's try this out. And that's literally what it was like. It was like me going, oh, nothing else has worked. Like, let's do this, man. I trust you. And I invested in you when I had no money. Like it was literally, you remember, like I had to, I had to like, all right, give me a few weeks. Let me scram. Like I was kind of tight at the time, but I just knew, and you didn't really like push me to do it. In some ways, you offered it up. You say, hey, like I'm willing to put in some time with you because, and you presented some past successes as well. Like it was just like, it wasn't like, hey, I have a PhD in counseling and here's this and that. It's like, hey, dude, here's the shit I went through. This is how I changed it. This is who I am today. I could see who you were. I could see what you went through. I was like, okay, what did this guy do? And that to me is more powerful than an education degree,
Would you recommend working with me to others?
Absolutely.
What would you say to someone if they were on the fence, if they're trying to make a decision as to whether or not they should work with me, if it's a right fit, if they're actually going to get the results they're after? What would you say to them?
I think a lot of people try to max out their value when it comes to, spending time and take it from a sales point, from my perspective in SEO consulting and digital marketing. You're investing in me helping you find that one thing that takes you to the next level, not maxing my value for my time, and that to me is like when that mindset shifts, it's like, hey, I've invested in books, I've invested in counselors, I've invested in my own time. Heck, I invested in alcohol. I invested in, things that would help me feel better. In the long run, I invested a lot more money in things that didn't work or were actually more detrimental to me. And the worst case scenario is I have a great conversation with someone that relates to me and helps me, develop more confidence. I mean, that out of the gate is going to happen. It's like the worst case scenario is that I actually become a more confident person after, because I have a non-judgmental person who went through something very similar in a much deeper way that can actually teach me what he did. And I'm looking for that one thing. And like you kind of helped me understand with like committing to a business idea, it's like you don't always know the future, but if you commit to it, you're going to figure it out real quick if that worked, and that's, you see it all the time. The more I step back and see it, I see people dabble in an idea for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, but never commit to it. And they just continue to just kind of drag along with potentially a very good idea. And that's how I thought it. And so I looked at it as an investment. I was like, this to me is like, if this potentially could be life-changing if I invest in it. And why would I not do that if it has potential? Because nothing in life is guaranteed. but I'm going to definitely put my money in the pot where the percentages are a lot higher than anywhere else. It's like you want to put your money in a slot machine or sit down at a poker table and make good decisions. And, you have a better chance if you're a good poker player to make more money. And so good poker players will put their money on the table because they look at the slot machine. They're like, that's just who knows what's going to happen. And so I looked at your situation, the percentages of me coming away from it, getting something super valuable that no one else can offer are much higher. And you're also very unique. There's no one else like you. And that to me is probably the biggest selling point. Is like, it's not like I was like, when I was looking for a therapist, I just kind of was like, oh, who's in town that's a therapist, well, there's so-and-so, and then I'd go review all their websites, look at all their credentials, things like that. Like, there's no one like you. There's no one. Like, there's a lot of business coaches. Like, coaching in general is kind of a saturated market, but you're different. You're not trying to fake it. Like, oh yeah, look, like you're really focusing on the personal growth of someone rather than trying to insert ideas that are like rehashed over and over in books. If I just went out and read books, like you're bringing a very unique approach to an outdoor adventure centric type of person with a who's male. It's kind of like, hey, that's me. You've niched yourself to only do like that. To me is attractive, and it was a no-brainer to try it out. And worst case scenario, I came away with a couple good ideas, and best case scenario is what I'm experiencing now.
Nate, why should someone listening take action right now?
Life is short. I mean, that's what it is. Like, I've learned, you've got to be proactive, and if you feel like you're ready to make an effort in your life, because we've got to have that motivation to make an effort, then why drag your feet on an idea? Why always keep it at the back of your head? And that's purely me speaking from a business perspective as well. It's like, okay, this is a great idea, execute on it. Well, I don't, maybe next week. Well, that maybe next week turns into maybe next month, maybe next year. And now all of a sudden, I'm 10 times worse off than I was a year ago. And that's a big focus of the long-term growth and health of both our businesses and our Heartbreak. It's about kind of understanding the process and committing to it, because it wasn't like you changed my life instantly. I really had to commit to some of the things we did. And it took me another 4 months, I think, after we stopped to truly feel moved on from the heartbreak from losing my best friend and making that adjustment in life. And so knowing that, it's like, it's better to start yesterday than it is in 6 months from now or a year from now.
Nate, what's your number one piece of advice for high-performing adventurous men?
Surround yourself with people that will make you a better person. It's kind of like we talk about backcountry skiing all the time. You don't want to ski with someone that's going to kill you. Everyone needs to be on the same page. And that's what I love about backcountry skiing, is that you quickly get down to the character of the person you're skiing with. It's not about having the best skier or the person that, is the coolest. It's about having someone that will dig you out, knows how to find you, will not take a line that's going to bury everyone, is going to be on board and not complain if we decide not to take a run, because we're all on the same page. And that to me just is something that you can go and do throughout in life, is build out those relationships that match that same mentality you have in the backcountry ski world. Have a plan. Everyone has the same. It's kind of like, we're going to go backcountry skiing on a big day with moderate, conditions, like lots of powder, and people don't bring a beacon. It's like, it's like, you're an idiot. And those are the people we don't want to ski with. it could be my best friend in the world. And if he shows up out of the beacon on a sketch day, we're going to cancel right there. It's like, I don't care, and that's what I felt like. It's like, surround myself with people that have that backcountry ski mentality and that peace of mind. I don't ever have to worry about that. Whereas if you're going, and we've done this, like, okay, let's go skiing. Okay, we'll let it slide this time. But the whole time that you're skiing, it's always in the back of your mind, so-and-so doesn't have a beacon. So-and-so doesn't have a beacon. What do we do? And it completely changes your whole plan and your trip because you're catering to this. But when everyone's on the same page, we're able to focus on the views and the beauty and make the right decisions, commit to the plan. And I would say we can take that in every aspect of our life and have that same mentality, and remove those stressors, which is kind of one of the things that came from you. Is like, it's not always about creating a more positive in your life, but removing a lot of the negatives. Like, simple as like, hey, don't drink as much. It's kind of like one of those, but it's very difficult. Everyone has their different vices in life. And sometimes it's like for me, it was very subtle, these subtle negatives in my life. Sort of like, hey, it's my best friend doesn't have a beacon on the backcountry ski hill. Just give him a beacon and all of a sudden your worries for the day go away.
Sounds like have the right team tools and attitude, and have the courage to check yourself if you need to.
Yeah, and that's what we do in the backcountry ski world. It's like everyone looks over everyone else. Hey, dude, your backpack's unzipped, or we take care of each other, because the last thing we want is someone else to be in a dire situation, and because we didn't check them over, it's sometimes the most boring things, like beacon checks, are to me the most important things. And that was taught early on in my backcountry ski training with some really, really awesome instructors. And it was really cool to see these guys at the top of their game in the mountaineering world and backcountry ski world really boil it down to really basic tasks are the most important things. And I felt like that's the biggest thing that we can do in all aspects of our life. In adventure is like, adventures are usually the best when we take care of all the basics the right way, but we have to be around people who also buy into that same mentality.
Take care of the basics and the bigger things become easy. Hey, Nate, thank you so much for your time today.
Oh, no worries, man. This is awesome. And I appreciate you and your friendship. And I'm super stoked for what you're doing for people. It's a big deal, especially in a world of ego, and sometimes success isn't always what we think it should be.
Yeah, absolutely. Bye, everyone.